heck happened to the Orioles? Find out next on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5 on Friday, February 16th. I am Frank Stanfield, joined by Chris Towers, and let's start with the biggest news from the week. Kyle Bradish has been diagnosed with a UCL sprain in his right elbow and will open the season on the IL. He was given a PRP injection and will begin a throwing program this weekend. Chris is obviously a big hit. Kyle Bradish finished as a top 20 starting pitcher in both roto and head-to-head points last year. We just wrapped up a mock draft where he went 201st overall. Do you think that's a big enough drop here for Kyle Bradish?
I moved him to that range. I think he's 221 in my top 300 in roto. So same range. The problem is, like, let's talk through the what I see as the three potential outcomes here, right? One is he rests, he starts throwing, the issue doesn't crop up. He has a great season. He's a top 25 starting pitcher like we think. That's one. Two is he rests, he starts throwing, he's fine, he doesn't pitch well, and he's just not very useful for fantasy. And then the third is this injury just completely wrecks his season. Either he makes a couple of starts and then gets shut down, he's just never healthy, whatever it is. The problem is, of those, I certainly don't think number one is the most likely outcome. And so there are a lot of ways that this can go wrong. I moved Kyle Bradish down to like 60, between 60 and 70 in my SP rankings. There's almost no way he finishes as the number 65 pitcher this season, right? It's like he might finish top 20 or he's just not very useful at all for fantasy. And so I don't think I can take him inside the top 200 certainly, but you move him to that range and you start looking at like Tristan McKenzie and Shane Baz and Max Scherzer and other guys with very big risk profiles who also have plenty of upside. I think that's the range that Kyle Bradish belongs in.
Yeah, I think that makes sense too. A nearly impossible ranking for Kyle Bradish here, but if you're just kind of assessing it based on what we know, has top 20 upside. The downside is he's out out for the entire season. Between SP 60 and 70, it kind of feels like that makes sense.
The good news is range. Most of the people who are drafting aren't drafting for another month. We should have a much better idea of what this is going to look like by the time you're actually drafting.
The next Orioles news item was that John Means is a month behind schedule because of a flare-up in his surgically repaired elbow from last October. That's now 2 names down in the Orioles rotation. Makes a little bit more sense now why they went out and traded for Corbin Burns. Roster Resource added Tyler Wells and Cole Irvin to the mix in the rotation. They do have 2 prospects worth knowing. Remember the names Chase McDermott and Cade Povich, just in case they get a shot. But Tyler Wells, Chris, I think there's legitimate excitement for him. He pitched well last year, 3.64 ERA, a .99 whip, just under a strikeout per inning. Does Tyler Wells kind of work into late round sleeper appeal for you?
So the problem with Tyler Wells is you look under the hood and you look at the peripherals and you look at the ERA estimators and they don't like him.
Is he like somebody that can outpitch those peripherals because he pitches in Camden Yards, though?
Pitches in Camden Yards. He's an extreme fly ball pitcher pitching in Camden Yards. So the effects of being an extreme fly ball pitcher are going to be dampened because it's a really hard place to hit for power. And he's likely to outrun, any BABIP regression that you might put on him because he's likely to run lower BABIP. So I do think Tyler Wells, where he pitches plays a big part in it. But yeah, I think he absolutely needs to be in the, 12 team reserve round range. But, that's probably around 300th overall is where I'm going to rank him.
The ADP for Tyler Wells is 357.4 as the 102nd starting pitcher off the board. I moved him up to SP 85, which kind of feels like it would be in that range. I think just inside the top 300 for me on Tyler Wells. Last news item with the Orioles, we learned that Gunnar Henderson's spring will be delayed due to a strained oblique. As things stand right now, the Orioles do not believe opening day is in jeopardy, but obliques can be very tricky. Chris, do you plan to lower Gunnar Henderson at all?
Right now, on February technically 16th, no. we are 6 months away from the start of the season. That is plenty of time.
6 weeks.
6 weeks. 6 weeks from the start of the season. Excuse me. That is plenty of time where if he had even a grade 1 or grade 2 oblique strain, you'd think he might be able to get back in 6 weeks. So I'm not moving him down yet. If we get 2 weeks from now and he's suffered a setback or he's not swinging yet or whatever it is, then I'll start to reconsider. But right now, very few drafts are happening. I'm not going to move him down in mid-February. I'll wait until he starts missing actual game action.
For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the Audacy app, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.